I've not been looking forward to making this video, so much so that I've put it off to 2023. The 2022 season wasn't easy to predict before pre-season testing, so let's see how I got on with my predictions. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. As always, I'm going to review my predictions with points. The further off I am from the actual result, the more points I get, and the lower the points the better. This means I can compare the score that I get to my 2021 predictions, where I scored a total of 40 points. And I can assure you that my 2022 score is not one you want to miss, and I did make just one single accurate prediction this year, so stay tuned to find out what that was. Constructor's predictions. In 10th, I'd gone for Haas, the team that had faced their biggest challenge in 2021, with poor results and a lack of development. At the start of this year though, they had a car that was able to compete at the front of the midfield. They upgraded their driver lineup, which included Kevin Magnussen, and that allowed them to compete further up the order, and as such the team actually ended up 8th, ahead of both AlphaTauri and Williams. It was a tricky prediction with these teams considering they were all in a difficult position when it comes to developing their 2022 car, so I was 2 positions out with Haas, and this will be the first of many mistakes. In 9th, I predicted it would be Alfa Romeo, another big mistake considering the Ferrari-powered team were also in a great place at the start of the year. The team were competing for the best of the rest spot in the early part of the season, but with a smaller budget than many of their rivals in the sport, they weren't able to bring as many upgrades as the others, so they slowed down in the second half of the year. The team did end up in 6th in the Constructor standings, only finishing ahead of Aston Martin on countback. In 8th, I predicted Williams, and again I was a couple of spots out with this one as well, as Williams were firmly the worst team in the 2022 season. The team had strong momentum after 2021, but despite making a good signing in Alex Albon, the team has gone backwards. To add insult to injury, they've lost their team principal at the end of their season and their technical designer, meaning it's unlikely the team will be able to recover from this season too quickly. I thought Alpine would be in 7th, which was another poor prediction as they actually ended up 4th. Again, this was a team that seemed to have a poor off-season before the year, and actually, I still believe they've been poorly managed off track. The team did invest in their power unit, which worked from a speed perspective, but was disappointing when it comes to reliability. I wonder if Alpine are in a better or worse position going into this year, as they have lost Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri last season. So I was out by 3 positions to score 3 points. I predicted AlphaTauri would be 6th as I thought they would continue their run of being the team that's consistently in the middle of the road. However, they were disappointing in 2022 and felt like they were one of the teams that underperformed the most in the season. So it was another 3 points for being 3 positions away. I went for Aston Martin in 5th, which wasn't a terrible prediction based on where they were at the end of the season, but it was out by 2 positions as they ended up behind Alfa Romeo on countback, with both teams scoring 55 points. I do feel like Aston Martin could be making their way up the order in 2023 though. McLaren were my 4th place pick as I thought that they would maintain their best of the rest spot that they finished in 2021. At the beginning of the season, the team was struggling with their brake system, and in Bahrain it looked like they might not even finish the race. The team were potentially the 4th best, but with the disappointing results from Daniel Ricciardo, they were held back, as Lando Norris ensured the competition with Alpine lasted towards the end of the season. In the end though, I was out by a single position on this one. A big error next, as I predicted Red Bull would struggle compared to 2021 and I had them in 3rd. They invested heavily in their 2021 car and were still developing it late into the season. However, I foolishly underestimated Adrian Newey, something that I won't be doing again. The team produced the strongest car of 2022 and it was particularly dominant this season, with Verstappen comfortably winning the championship and the team easily beating Ferrari. Mercedes were my 2nd place pick as I thought their dominant era would come to an end. This was the case, but I didn't predict their fall would be as far as it was. The team were almost in the midfield early on and they did recover well through the year to end up 3rd. It'll be interesting to see how they get on going into next season. And I had Ferrari to win the title. Not an awful prediction, but not exactly great either. The team were the 2nd best of 2022, which was a good improvement from previous years, but the team have let Mattia Binotto go, which shows how the team management feel after the results this season. So it was a total of 20 positions out and 20 points, and at this point after 2021 I'd scored just 8. So it's not looking good for my score this year, but trust me, it's about to get an awful lot worse. Drivers' predictions. In 20th, I predicted it would be Nikita Mazepin. Now, of course, he was replaced before the season began, so I'm just going to put Kevin Magnussen in that position for the purpose of this score. He, of course, came 13th in the standings, so we're off to a great start with 7 points on the tally. In 19th, it was Zhou Guanyu for me, as I thought he may struggle to get up to speed. He was actually 18th, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a bad prediction. I can see him performing much closer to Bottas in 2023 though. And then in 18th, I predicted it would be the other Haas driver of Mick Schumacher, and whilst he did finish a few places behind his teammate, he still ended the season in 16th, meaning I was a couple of positions out once again. In 17th, I predicted it would be Nicholas Latifi. Of course, he ended up 20th as Williams struggled, and in hindsight, I feel I was way too generous putting Latifi this high up in the standings. In 16th, I had Valtteri Bottas, again showing how I expected Alfa Romeo to have a disappointing season. But he did exceptionally well at the beginning of the year as he came 10th in the standings, an excellent achievement for his first season with that team. And then in 15th, I thought it would be Esteban Ocon, in what was perhaps the worst prediction that I made this year. Ocon ended up in 8th, and he did well to finish ahead of Alonso, and Alpine did very well to finish 4th, so it all went wrong with that prediction. In 14th, I picked Alex Albon, a driver that did well in 2022, but ultimately ended up 19th in the standings with the Williams car not performing this season. I had Tsunoda in 13th, and once again it was a poor prediction given the disappointing results from AlphaTauri this year. He ended up 17th, and I feel he has a tough season ahead of him alongside Nick de Vries. And then in 12th, I predicted it would be Lance Stroll, a driver who ended up 15th with Aston Martin being a bit further down the order than I'd predicted this season. So again, 3 more incorrect predictions and more points for the tally. From 11th to 9th, I predicted it would be Vettel, Alonso and Gasly, and actually these predictions aren't awful. Vettel and Alonso were just a single position out, and then Gasly is a driver that's tended to do very well in the midfield whenever AlphaTauri have produced a car that he could be confident driving. So whilst Gasly was 5 positions away from his finishing position, I'm going to be pleased with just being 1 place out for Alonso and Vettel. It's in this next group that we find my one single accurate prediction of 2022. But before we get to that, I thought Perez would be 8th, which was a dreadful prediction given he was fighting for 2nd in the championship right up until the last race. He ended up 3rd in a car that was the best on the grid. And then Lando Norris was my prediction for 7th, and that is indeed where he ended up, firmly in the best of the rest spot and dragging the McLaren team up the order. And speaking of McLaren, I made the mistake of thinking Ricciardo would recover after his disappointing 2021 season and actually beat Norris, which was clearly a poor prediction as he was even worse in 2022. From 5th to 3rd, I predicted it would be Russell, Verstappen and Leclerc, which again was a disappointing prediction for the season. Russell was just 1 position out, but given he managed to beat Hamilton over the season and I predicted he'd be a few spots behind his teammate, I don't think that was too impressive. Likewise, Verstappen obviously comfortably won the title and Leclerc was 2nd after a strong-ish 2022 season. So again, more points for the tally. And then finally, I thought it would be Hamilton who'd win the title from Carlos Sainz, and how wrong I was as these two ended up 6th and 5th in the standings respectively. A disappointing prediction, but I guess that's what you get for predicting blind. So my overall score for the drivers' standings was 68, which when added together with the Constructors' Championship gives me a total score of 88 for 2022, more than twice as many points as my 2021 predictions. There aren't many positives to take from this other than it can surely only get better in 2023, as we actually have an idea of the pecking order after last year. Let me know which prediction was the worst in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, there's a button exactly for that. And whilst you're there, do consider subscribing as well.